I think I'm more around innovation. So I kind of touch points on the internal systems as well, internal business systems, also looking at the client side of things. But again, around the digital PMO that we implemented at Seven Trend, again, it's kind of correlates to the talk that I had recently at House of PMO. Get
Yeah.
your basics right first, sort your data strategy in the first place, make sure you store your data correctly in a sort of structured way, and then kind of have an integrated source of truth is what we say, as there's not going to be a single source of truth anywhere. Everyone would have their own sort of versions of working on things, but it should all come into one place and it should be integrated in a way where you can get the best value out of it. So again,
Mhm.
when you look at this from a digital PMO perspective, you have your risks on one side, you have your project plans coming in from systems like Microsoft Projects or Primavera P6, and again on-site information from site pictures and all those sorts of things. How do you make sure you bring all of this together and all of that data tells you the same story, right? There's lots of things around machine learning as well, but there's also one thing to keep in mind, that the foundational models, by foundational models I mean GPT and Claude and all of these models, they're referred to as foundation models, and these models are getting so much better over the time that some
Mm.
of some of these tasks around, for instance, classifying an email as a spam or a ham, you would have to train a separate sort of classification model for this previously, and
Mm.
now I think an LLM generalizes so well that it can take care of something like this. Sentiment analysis and all the tasks like related to a language processing, all of these tasks are kind of taken care by these foundation models. And on this thing, I'd actually recommend a book called AI Engineering by Chip Hewen, and it talks a lot about how you build applications using AI and specifically foundation models. So again, it's not something which is super technical. It's not like around code and all those sorts of things. It's more around the business value of AI. It's technical enough for you to be interested enough to read that. And
Mhm.
again, it's a huge book. So if you're
Mm.
not too much into reading books, one of the things I do is I use Notebook LM, and I'm sure you guys have used Notebook LM as well. So I was use almost all of these tools. I use Windsurf, I use Cursor
Yeah.
to test all of these things, because again, it's a part of my job, but at the same time, I like using it and I like testing these tools. One of the things I did was I sort of connected my Claude desktop with GitHub, with Netlify, which is again the sort of choice of deploying applications from all of these vibe coding tools like Bolt and Replit and Lovable. They all deploy their applications on this hosting platform called Netlify, and
Mhm.
there's an MCP for that as well. So why should I use Bolt if its real value is one click deploy? I can do that using Claude Code plus a Netlify MCP. And on Bolt, you have connections on GitHub, Netlify, and Superbase, which is the database of choice. I think by vibe coding, my understanding of vibe coding is basically if you have sort of no clue about programming at all and you are able to create an application, deploy that application just by a few prompts, and that basically is vibe coding. And AI
Mhm.
is automatically writing code for you just using basic instructions and without having to worry about the individual details around things. So, for instance, you can actually in this day and age write a three-line prompt, and the AI can build and publish an app for you. So that is like how it summarized vibe coding. If you've built something using, again, I would say a cursor, so for instance Bolt and some of these platforms, you can't choose the models there, right? So you don't really
Yeah.
know which model has written the code. For uh, for tools like Cursor and Windsurf, which are again called vibe coding tools, but at the same time you have more control over the details. So you can again choose the model. So you can choose, for instance, a Claude Sonnet 4, which I kind of trust at the moment in terms of writing code for me. And I've tested it with a lot of converting of my logic into code. So if you start with these sort of tools, then again, I think it's better to sort of, I'd probably have a better trust on the code and I can give it to someone else. But again, I would actually create the documentation if I'm giving it to a software developer, keeping in mind the software developer would also have access to these tools. So it might be easier for them to just take in the logic and sort of orchestrate it in a way which is, again, they would be able to create the same thing that you did in an hour, right? So it's again, I'd let them do that part, but it's good to sort of demonstrate your features. I think there's lots of different definitions of AGI. People kind of change the language quite a lot. But yeah, again, for me, I think even if you take large language models, so if you know the chief scientist at Meta, I think his name Yan Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned that scaling LLMs won't help us reach AGI. So again, it's the thing that the foundation models. I keep coming back to the foundation models because that's something that is the base foundation layer of everything that we are doing at the moment. It all started with no one was talking about AI before ChatGPT. Like I did not
Yeah.
see a lot of people talk about AI when I was sort of even when I was in my masters, when I was doing my masters from here in the UK. So I did my big data science. I did big data science in the Queen Mary University, and even
Okay.
then we did not have ChatGPT. Like we did not
Mm.
have a formalized version of ChatGPT. Like the real shift from ChatGPT 3 to 3.5 was the one where we started seeing good results and all those sorts of things. I think that time it was still ChatGPT 3 or even before that. If you with large language models, the only way I see sort of them going wrong and going completely wrong and completely evil is if you sort of train it with bad information a lot of times. Like if you keep doing that for a very long time, like if you base the entire training, and if it goes really wrong in that aspect, that's when it probably might happen. But I think people are smart enough and can intervene
I,
after it goes wrong for the first couple of steps. So I think perplexity should not exist in the first place, but it does. The reason being, so every day I see new sort of startups and
Mhm.
new AI startups from these. Uh, take Y Combinator for an example. It funds a lot of these startups, and I'm not a very big fan of Y Combinator now
Okay.
because the types of startups that it's funding all of these days, they're like 3x or 4x multipliers at best. So if you look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when YC was actually good, the multipliers were like much higher. Like you would see take $1 million in funding as an example, you'd see much more companies that make it through that 50 million mark. Now you'd only see companies going 2 or 3 million, just covering the costs and either selling the company or it just like shuts down. So that's there's two books. There's one which is called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. You might have heard of that one. Again, Naval is like an angel investor. He was the founder of AngelList. And there's so much wisdom in that book. One of the things I sort of picked up from that book is basically it says that just read. Like if you don't like a specific book, just stop. Just leave that book because I was of an opinion that I can't read another book if I'm reading one. I had to finish that one. But that sort of basic belief has changed so much that I just keep experimenting with things and keep reading multiple books at the same time. The second one is Steal Like an Artist from Austin Kleon.
Okay.
It again talks about the fact that everything creative is built on an existing idea because everything is again the concept.